Okay, good morning everyone. I'm Martin Shouler from Arrow. Welcome. It's a great pleasure to see everyone here today. We've got quite a lot to get through in terms of programme, so I won't hold proceedings up too much now, but just a few housekeeping bits and pieces. For those who haven't found them yet, the loos are just out the door and turn left. They've both got the gents and ladies there. We're not expecting fire drill, but it's nice and easy. If you hear the alarms go, you'll probably see an Arab person running out the door. Just follow them straight through the barriers, which should be open. And the muster point is come out the main doors, turn left, and it's in Fitzroy Square. So just follow the hordes of people wandering very slowly, ambling up there. Quick couple of thank yous. So first of all, for WhatsApp for pulling everything together. So Kevin's at the back there, Suzanne's somewhere else. Hi. Thank you very much. I think it's a fantastic agenda we've got today. It's been put together and it's reflecting quite a wide variety of topics under sort of demand management. Two quick things are badges. So nobody go out without your badge because you'll be chased down the streets by Suzanne at the back there. So if you can just pass them through at the end, I think we can recycle them. Very nice badges, by the way. And just really by way of introduction to the whole day, we've got a chair for this morning's sessions, which are going out live on webinar. It's being recorded, so we can pick that up at a later stage. But it's a game in two halves. The first half, basically presentations, and Jean will take you through those shortly. But they range really from, I think, from the large-scale trial down to individual fittings and how they fit within a trial. I think that's a good spectrum of topics. We then break for lunch, and we'll have an exhibition, the so-called suitcase exhibition. So that'll be quite interesting to see how that goes. And then the afternoon session we'll break into 4 plenary sessions, and you've been nominated for individual sessions, but if you don't feel that you fit well into the one you've been nominated, have a word with myself or Siraj, who check at the front, or Alexa, who's just walked in. We can reassign you, no problem. So I'm now going to hand over to Jean, who's going to take us through the morning sessions. And welcome everyone.
Thanks, Martin. So I just wanted to say a few words of introduction. So as Martin said, welcome to everybody. Why am I standing here? For some years I've chaired the Water Efficiency Evidence-Based Steering Group. The work of that group started many years ago with work through WaterWise, but then most recently through the Collaborative Fund, which was set up, we think, around 2012. Doug and I were talking about that, trying to remember. The first 12 months was spent trying to sort out the legal complexities of the fund, but it's got up and running. It's done this fantastic series of projects that we're going to hear about this morning. I think it's worth saying a few words about the importance of the work. Water resources are really scarce, and with the impacts of climate change growth, they're set to become more so. And just to put the challenge into context, and just the challenges facing my company, Anglian Water, in the Anglian region, the combined effects of the needs to reduce abstraction to sustainable levels in sensitive areas, the impact of growth on the fastest growing regions of the country, and the potential impact of climate change, all of those together could see a reduction in supply and demand balance of about 550 megalitres a day, and we put 1100 megalitres a day into supply. So it's a huge challenge, and other companies face similar challenges. On the back of that, Ofwat, the Secretary of State in the Water Act 2014 have a new resilience duty, and I think what's relevant about that is that in the way that duty is drafted, it makes explicit reference to demand reduction being at the heart of that resilience duty. And recently, in DEFRA thinking about the resilience duty, called together a number of companies. And coming out of that was a project to carry out a strategic review of water resources long-term planning over not just 25 years but 50 years. And for some reason I'm chairing that project as well. And it's quite likely as part of that that there may be a need for strategic assets. But the first step in looking at future resources and future requirements is how we can make a step change in demand management and reductions in consumption. Companies need to do their part on leakage, but really importantly at the heart of it is that we need to work with our customers to reduce their consumption as well. The projects that we're going to hear about this morning are really important in understanding and building the evidence base so that companies can understand what works and what doesn't work, and have confidence in what demand reduction initiatives will deliver, and also to understand the costs of that. So this workshop is really timely in informing companies and developing action plans to reduce demand. So we've got 4 projects that we're looking at this morning. 3 of them came from the Collaborative Fund, and then the third one on the agenda this morning
has joined the conference.
Thames Water, looking at water saving reductions on a large scale, have very kindly volunteered to give us feedback on that as well. So at the other projects we've got Leaky Loos, and looking at the findings from that project, and we'll hear from Nick and Stuart on that. Expanding the evidence base. I think the challenge for any individual within a company is understanding and seeing where the evidence is and making that readily available. So that's the second project, the Thames Water project, and then showering behaviours, which was a collaborative project between the fund and Unilever, and we'll hear from Gilbert and Gilbert on that. So, with no further ado, over to Nick and Stuart for the Leaky Loos.
Brilliant. Okay, great. Well, thank you very much all. So I'm Nick Gilbert. I'm from Affinity Water, and I'm the water efficiency manager. But really, I'm here today acting as the project lead on behalf of the steering group who took part in Leaky Loos Phase 2. I guess you're probably if you're new to this, you're probably wondering why Phase 2, what's been happening here. And I guess really, my few words really just to put a little bit of this about in context. And I think for us what we kind of recognise is that actually leaking toilets have been an issue that's been ongoing for some time, and if you kind of go really far back potentially, you can say this is almost a root cause partly of the change of regulations that came back in 1999 in terms of fittings, and to be honest Stuart will talk a little bit more about that as part of the project. The actual Phase 2 part of it comes around because there was an original project completed in 2012, which was Leaky Loos Phase 1, and that actually had some very strong findings again that Stuart will talk about, but in essence that was limited to just being a desk-based study to really try and understand the sort of scope and scale of leaking toilets. And while the findings were good, actually the limitations of the project recognised that we really needed to get in there and directly see toilets, understand what the root causes of failure were, and then start to look at how we can manage those. I guess really the other thing I just particularly want to say is that obviously Stuart will talk strongly about data, but actually there's a very kind of social side to this project, and I think for all the steering group who worked on it, it was quite a surprise for us how intensive it was having to work with customers, get into properties, both to find toilets that needed looking at, and also then to undertake repairs. And so particularly I'd like to extend my thanks both to the steering group who helped, so that was ourselves, Affinity Water, Thames Water, Sutton and East Surrey, and United Utilities, And then we were also assisted as well by South East Water and by South Staff's Water, who also contributed data knowledge. Particularly, though, I'd also just most like to say thank you to Ricardo and Aqualogic, who actually undertook the delivery of the programme. And I think we all haven't been too badly scarred from it since. I'm actually going to sit down now and let Stuart handle it fully by himself. Sorry.
Okay.
But thank you very much.
Okay, thanks, Nick. Yes, as Nick says, I'm from Ricardo Energy and Environment, and we were the lead consultants on the project, and we partnered with Aqualogic, who undertook a lot of the field work, the investigations and the fixes of the leaking toilet, so big thanks to them. Okay, so as Nick mentioned, there is a bit of a perception around leakage and leakage from WCs, and you know whether the actual wastage from WCs is a major issue that affects all water companies. So really that's been floating around for a few years, I think, and however there's no accepted figure for what that actually looks like. So you know, number of toilets that are leaking, what the volume of water that's being wasted.
Have joined the conference.
Nick mentioned phase 1 of this research. Now that reported in 2012, and that showed that approximately 10% of all WCs were found to be leaking, and it estimated that those WCs were leaking on average 400 litres a day. So quite significant in terms of those numbers. And they also estimated that total losses could actually amount up to 1.8 billion litres a year. So it is a big issue for the water industry if we look at those figures. Now, that issue obviously impacts on PCC. It's customer side of the meter, so it impacts on PCC, and that proportion could be around 9%. So it's worth tackling. However, again, there's no robust data on why toilets leak. I think that study, the phase 1 study and previous studies in the literature show there's some anecdotal evidence that suggests failing flush valves, inlet valve seals, etc. are causes, but there was no empirical data around the causes of leakage. So really this study, the overall aim of this study was about improving and refining the evidence base for WC leakage, but also really to try and address whether it is a significant issue for the sector and how, if it can, how it can be reduced and how future leakage might be prevented. Now there's a number of specific objectives to the project which I won't go through one by one, but really it was about improving that understanding of WC leakage through a physical investigation of leakage itself, and then to repair those leaks that have been identified. So a key part of the study really was the physical investigation, and this was undertaken in 2 phases. Phase 1 was about establishing an assessment of scale and really looking to test the theory that 10% of all WCs leak. Now, we wanted to ensure that the analysis was robust, so we needed to control some variables. So, for example, hardness may have an impact. We also didn't want to go out to our audience and say, we're coming to look to see whether you've got leaking toilets, because that could bias the sample. So we went out actually under the guise of a free home water check. And we were going to do this through investigating 100 randomly selected WCs within a defined geographical area. Phase 2 then was really about identifying and investigating toilets that are leaking, known leaking toilets. And we were looking to identify 300 of those, and that primarily we were aiming to do that through existing water company initiatives. So the steering group partners, we were looking to identify them, these leaking toilets, through ongoing initiatives such as high consumption queries, metering programs, regulation visits. We did have a backup though in terms of leak detection strips, so if numbers weren't high enough we could send out leak detection strips to customers directly and identify leakage that way. So the phase 1 approach, as I mentioned, random selection of 1,000 households. This was in the United Utilities region primarily, and we actually selected the data upon a range of variables. So we were looking at different